Welcome to Here's What I Learned. I'm your host, Jackie Hayes. I'm a certified online business manager and launch strategist for coaches craving a greater hustle-free impact. On this podcast, my guest and I pull back the curtain on running a successful online coaching business. So sit back, take notes, and enjoy. Today, my guest Emily Feairs and I talk about being a feminist leader, even when you're a team of one. Emily is a coach for smart women who want to make an impact on the world without exhausting themselves in the process. Can you tell me what it is that gets you excited each morning to wake up and get started and do what it is that you do?
Oh, Jackie, so much. I mean, this is why I got into it all in the first place, right? And so, I take what I know about feminist leadership and I take what I know about humans and I put it together to create what feels like a ripple effect. So whether it is business owners and, the clients that they work with, or whether it is corporate women, or whether it is women in politics, knowing that they get to feel better, have a business or a life or career that's sustainable, that they're not going to burn out from, and that they get to basically unleash their genius on the world, just like gives me all the chills, because that's what I really think it is. It's for me, I think all of this, all of my coaching, all of my feminist leadership work is just helping unlock what women already had inside and what they were totally capable of, but what was being sort of weighed upon by perfectionism, by doubt, by societal expectations, by patriarchal BS, right? All of that kind of pushes us down and has us take on too much. And then we burn out and then we don't feel like we can ever do it. And we think something's wrong with us. So for me to allow women to see that they are capable, that they are geniuses, that they are leaders, and like for them to bring their genius in the world, I think we just all benefit. And it makes a freaking amazing world for all of us.
How did you come to coaching?
Great question. I had actually started off in psychology. And so this is like early 2000s and did not like it. So I loved learning about human brains. That fascinated me. Humans in general, I just think are amazing and awesome. But what I didn't love about psychology is two things really. One, it took awareness and let you sit in it thinking that was going to create action. And I just don't think that that's true for what I see as like a huge part of the population. And two, it really had a focus on what was going wrong instead of what was going right. And the focus on what was going wrong was then categorized into these like neat little boxes of like, here's where you're dysfunctional and here's why, the spectrum of human expression that you are isn't good. It's bad. And to me, it just seemed patriarchal, misogynistic. It didn't include the full spectrum of people and how they show up in the world, and that they could be functioning perfectly well. And psychology really just sort of put a label on it. I didn't think that the label served most people most of the time. And so I kind of left my psychology degree, having just argued that, the basis for psychology was in many ways sexist, wrong, all of these things, and was like, all right, well, now what? And so I started working in a retail company and I quickly moved up. And that was sort of my pattern. It's like every time I started working there somewhere, I sort of quickly moved up through the ranks. And I started to get exposed to leadership development and coaching principles and all of this stuff. And I started to be like, aha, this is clear. My brain understands this. This takes these big conceptual ideas and actually gives me a roadmap for how to get somewhere. And so I really started loving coaching and got certified in the early 2000s. But this is like pre-iPhone, internet businesses. And so I really didn't know what to do with it next. I was also in my early 20s, certain psychology professions wouldn't even take me on until I was in my 30s. And so I kind of know what to do and started volunteering in politics and basically spent the next decade in politics in politics, if you've never worked in it, it's like a 24/7. Always, there's always a fire to be put out, usually actually 10 fires every second. The number, I think I calculated once before that I was getting 2.5 emails in or out every second of the day. Second, not even minute, right? So
Wow,
hundreds
yeah.
and hundreds of emails every single day. And the expectation was always, really high. You had to be perfect. And it was sort of this mantra of like, she who suffers most wins. And I abided by those rules for so long. And then was really crashing and burning out and was like, oh, if I could only figure out a way. And it was sort of like, oh my gosh, I have this coach training that would probably be really, really useful right now. So basically I had to coach myself out of it. I went back into my coach training. I went and got, recertified, did all my hours, and did all of the practices. And I basically had to become a product of my product. But I did it because I was drowning, not necessarily because I was wanting to build a business, which was interesting because it required me to really lean in and not just do it because I had because I wanted to build this business, but because I had to. I was, there was a point at which I was pregnant with my second. I had just come back from mat leave from my first, and really being like, okay, what worked before was great when I had, all the time in the world and no kids to get home to, but now I'm sharing a body with someone. So I need to be respectful of that. And I have a kid at home that I want to get home to. And so I really had to put these coaching tools like even more to work to make sure that I was really focused with my time. I was doing work on things that I loved and that felt aligned. And I was respecting the asset, which is a huge part of feminist leadership, which means that like, I got to respect my body. And if it's enough, it's enough. And you don't push harder. And all of those things, I had to figure out how to work within them in a culture that was the opposite. And so that's really how I came to not only coaching, but really feminist leadership and coaching together.
What does feminist leadership mean to you?
Mm-hmm. It's really a style of leadership that's based on principles that respect the humanity and genius of all the people, right? So whether that is when I was working in government, it was really respecting the constituency of the people who would be affected by your files and understanding that they were geniuses in their lived experience, respecting everyone who's around the table. When you're developing something or doing something, right? If you're in a mastermind, that looks like respecting the genius of everyone who comes to the table, even though they have completely different perspectives or tactics or any of that. For coaches and their clients, it's respecting and eliciting the genius of your clients and being able to reflect it back to them. And it's really prioritizing those principles as the first thing you need to get done. Because when people feel like they matter, including when you make yourself matter, and that their contributions matter, then like everyone benefits, right? Including the bottom line. And so it's the sort of inverse in many ways of the sort of patriarchal version of leadership in which there's a hierarchy and there's a right and a wrong. And some people have access and other people don't. And you work hard to try and get up there and get access. And that there's an ability to like hustle your way through things, or you really are you don't have enough knowledge inside of you. You actually have to go out and get that, and other people hold on to it, and there's not enough success for everyone. Feminist leadership is basically the inverse of almost all of that.
I know that a lot of people are worried about being in a leadership role because they're worried about repeating what they were taught in, say, corporate America, or just being steeped in America and our culture. And so they shy away from it and they kind of hold themselves back because there is there is other models out there, obviously. They're not in your face as much, and we're not as familiar with them. So what would, on like a day-to-day basis, what would the practice of feminist leadership look like for, say, a coach with maybe a VA or a podcast producer, just a very small team? What would that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, first of all, knowing that there's more than one way to do things, right? So I talk a lot about delegating being one of the hardest things for women to figure out how to do, because based on the hierarchical structure, you know the right way to do things, and delegating is the process of getting people to do them your way exactly. Versus the feminist version of delegation is understanding how to really articulate the end result that you're going towards, knowing that there's no right way to do things, but eliciting the genius from your team to see how we can get there together. So if it's, hey, VA, I'm going to be doing a launch and I have all the email sequences written, and here's the experience that I want people receiving them to have. How do you think we best achieve that? And then eliciting all of that. It's also looking inside your own brain. So this is where I find so many business owners spend too much time spinning around in circles and not seeing enough results, and they feel exhausted and burnt out, is that they're attending every webinar, they're binging every podcast, they are looking for every possible place for the answer except for within inside themselves. Even if they try and write something that is like their intellectual property, they'll immediately start doubting it or think, oh, it didn't work, so I'm going to try a new one. Or they'll check in, they start Googling it and seeing how other people said it or how other people did it. Instead of really, I say, like, stay in your own lane, in your own brain, right? You really got to know and trust that you have enough in you right now. You don't even need to learn more. You have enough right now today to really impact someone. And when you spin out and doubt yourself, you're not impacting anyone. So trusting your own genius is enough. Taking care of the person first. So if your VA is sick, instead of, oh, now I have to do everything myself and really getting upset, when you put the people first, you realize that if it's like, it's okay, either we'll push back the launch date by a day or we'll figure this out, right? Respecting that, understanding that everyone's contribution and humanity comes first means that your people understand that they're respected as a human. And then they show up with that respect for you back, right? It's when we push really hard and we expect them to do things because we're paying for it, damn it. Then that is really where we lose a lot of people. They don't want to be on our team because they feel like we're not on their team. I think those are probably some of the biggest pieces when it comes to leading. And as we go through all this, I also want to really point out that if you're a team of one right now, you are still leading someone. There's the leader part of yourself and there's the employee part of yourself, right? There's the one that makes the business decisions and there's the one that actually has to execute on all of those. And if you are harsh with yourself, if you're, oh, I wasted so much time today. Oh, I'm so frustrated with myself. Oh, I did that terribly. Oh, no one's liking my marketing. Oh, no one showed up for that consult call. I totally failed that. If you are cracking the whip at yourself, you're being a really, really mean, harsh, not feminist-based leader for yourself. So all of these principles apply to how you treat yourself and how you manage the employee version of yourself as well.
The first thing that you said there, and then it came back to, if you're a team of one right now, when you're talking with your employee or a vendor or yourself about something that needs to be done, it's not dictating to them. It's respecting that the knowledge and the skills that they have and asking them what their thoughts are on how to proceed, which is the same thing that you could do with yourself. The leader of you would say, what do you know here? What skills do you have that we can bring to the table right now, as opposed to going out to Google and looking for the answer?
100%, 100%. And I love the way you articulated that, because it really is about coming back to your own brain and asking, what do I already know? Right? How do I already know how to do this? And understanding that just asking clarifying questions of yourself is the best way to get information versus, as you said, going out to Google. So if you're like, well, I don't know how to do that. Awesome. How would I figure it out? How will I know? What do I know? Going back to those questions, or, asking your VA that, like, oh, that's so interesting. I would have done it this way. What's your thought behind, the process that you laid out? Understanding that they come from a point of genius and that they might have something in there instead of just dismissing it on first glance and saying, well, that's not what I was thinking. So It's not right.
You said that one of the things to do is being clear on, for instance, the experience you want somebody to have.
Yeah.
And so part of delegating, I think, is not only being clear on the experience, but being clear on ultimately your values as a business owner and in the business, how you want the business to operate. What other suggestions do you have for delegating tasks? Because women are not socialized to delegate. And so that is a skill in and of itself that people who are socialized as women need to learn.
Yeah.
What suggestions do you have for that?
Yeah, well, I think we have to first look at the reasons why. I mean, what is it specifically about the socialization of women that makes delegation hard? It is the expectation of perfectionism, but not actually ever knowing what perfect looks like. So it's these needing to reach a level in which it's never been defined for ourselves, right? And when that is the underlying operating principle, it's really hard to clearly articulate what it is that you're looking for to someone else because you just kind of know it, right? And that's often what women describe as the experience. Like, I just know how to do it. I don't even know how to say it. It just kind of comes to me naturally. But the reason it comes to you naturally is because you've done the figuring out process. And so it's uncomfortable to be in the messy failure after failure learning process for perfectionists. And as a result, we don't allow our people to be in the learning mode. Instead, we think if we just are like hyper clear on the exact steps they need to do it in order to get it right, that they will do it right. But that rarely ever works. Rarely have people come to me being like, I just wrote a really clear manual and everyone executed it perfectly. Like, no, because you're not engaging their brain or their genius or their understanding. You're not allowing them to be unperfect through the learning process. So you become what I call the answer oracle, which is basically everyone comes to you for every little question and you do all the thinking for them. And because you want it to look right, you're willing to do that. Because you want it done perfectly and perfection is the aim, you end up answering all the questions and doing all the work for them in many ways, right? The other sort of reason that women are socialized in this way is because we're also expected to do it all. We are expected to schedule everything for everyone. And it's just sort of like kind of plopped on our plates a lot of the time without much realization. And when we get to the point where we're actually working with a team and getting support, it can feel deeply uncomfortable, especially when women ascend through leadership or get bigger and bigger teams. You've gained so much value in the world through your socialization as being a doer of things, of being the person who completed tasks. And so for you to move to creating value with your brain, which a woman couldn't possibly do in the patriarchy, right? Like her thoughts, really? Then it becomes more and more uncomfortable because your identity was as someone who created value by doing all these things for other people. And so to ask other people to do things for you, it's just foreign and deeply uncomfortable in that way. So just being aware of the reasons why it's hard in the first place based on that socialization is a great first step, because you can start to see how that shows up and then choose consciously like, okay, that's why I'm feeling uncomfortable. That's why I'm feeling frustrated. That's why it feels this way. And instead of trying to solve for those feelings with just taking the work back or not delegating or deciding you don't need a VA or they're terrible at what they do, you actually engage with the process differently. So that looks like, as we said, really painting a very clear picture of what done looks like, which usually requires you to sit down with your brain first and figure out what done does look like. You actually have to be clear. And the best part about that is that that becomes your end result. It becomes something you can actually measure against versus the, ideal perfection, which there is no clear standards for. And so you're always working towards something that is unknown. You actually have a really clear end result that you can say, hey, did this line up? If yes, awesome, we've achieved it. I can put it down. With perfectionism, there is no ability to put it down because you're always working towards something. Or you can say, hey, we didn't line up with them in this place, and this place. I wonder why that is. Let's go back and ask questions until we get really clear on why that is. right? Instead of being like, someone messed up, they need to be fired, and then like really freaking out. And then that second part of really letting go of the doing, just understanding the shifting value of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that comes back to like you leading with a values-based business and really leading with what I call like your legacy or your impact first. When you are going for the long-term growth, when you're really going for the impact that you want to have on your clients, you understand that being the sender of the email isn't the impact that is created, right? It's maybe writing the content or creating something that is just so valuable in it that creates the impact. And you focus on the things that create impact versus finding your value in the doing.
There's about a billion things that you said that I'm like, oh, now I want to touch on this. One of them from at the very start, as you were talking about the delegation and the, seeing our value or in the doing, it reminded me of a conversation I was having with a woman about her household. And we were sharing how in my house I am currently in a relationship with a man, a cisgendered man, and he does the dishes when I cook, and vice versa. And she's like, "Oh, that would be awesome, but I do the cooking and the dishes." And we got to talking a little bit more, and she's like, "Well, he never puts them away right, or he doesn't wash them right." And I'm like, "Well, then why would he ever do the dishes if he can't ever do it right?" But part of it was that need for to the perfect. This is how dishes are done. These are how dishes are put away. But also that seeing that's part of her value. This is what I give back to the household, is to do all the things.
Yeah.
And I think we take that into our businesses as well.
Yeah, 100%. Instead of sort of just starting on the basis that I am valuable, inherent, and worthy, right? I see the example of like, does your family abandon you when you get a cold and can't get out of bed for the day? Are they like, you're garbage now, you're no use to us? Like, I hope not, really, right? If you just because you can't produce or just because you can't push forward, that doesn't have anything to do with your value and your inherent. And so another part of the feminist, principles, really that understanding, respecting that humanity is saying like, you are a human. All of the humanness that comes with it, all the messiness that comes with it, all of the needs, all of the everything of just who you are is awesome and enough right now, today. And when you can work towards really, truly believing and feeling that, you don't feel like you have to jump off the couch to go tidy up something or to always be busy or to, create another post or create another freebie, or you're not like constantly driven to doing and doing and doing to feel like you're enough. Because at the end of the day, even if you accomplish a million things, most likely you're not feeling like enough because your actions don't create how you feel about yourself. How you feel about yourself creates how you feel about yourself.
What does productivity mean to you and from a feminist lens?
Ooh, juicy question. So part of feminist, again, is like you define what it means for you. I see that when you are taken care of, when you feel as if you're part of the team, when human brains are basically at their most, I'm going to use air quotes here, productive, when all of their base needs are taken care of, right? When they don't feel that they're under threat, when they feel like they are respected, when they've had enough rest, when they have enough food, when they're taking time to pee. Yes, I know a lot of you do not take the time to pee, right? Yeah, guilty as well sometimes, right? When I just got to get this one thing done. And then it's an hour later. When we are rested and able to focus and we're taking time off and we know that we have genius inside of us and we're not searching for it outside of ourselves, our brains are actually primed to think at their highest level, to access the parts of our consciousness and our thinking and processing that really truly is the most genius part of your brain. We're able to be clear. We're able to actually go through our work. When we procrastinate or we're not, productive, it's usually because we're feeling an emotion inside and it feels deeply uncomfortable. And we try and solve for it through either scrolling and procrastinating, or I'm just going to tidy my desk first, or, I really need a cup of coffee before I sit down and do this. you end up doing all these smaller things because you're trying to really ease the anxiety that you're feeling on the inside, right? Or if you are on the other end of the spectrum and you don't procrastinate, but you do a million things. Like I have clients who start off with me and they have barely made any money in their business, but they're like, I do 5 blog posts a week and I pin on Pinterest and I do podcasts and I do this and I do that. And you're like, whoa, holy moly. What are you avoiding feeling by doing all of this stuff, right? And we find out that we're avoiding feeling the risk of rejection by doing one thing a day, but doing it in a way that actually creates a result of saying like, hey, do you want to buy my thing? Yes or no? And so I think productivity is going to look different for everyone, but if you want to be productive, if you want to stop doing the things that are air quotes unproductive, you got to first realize that you're only being unproductive because you're not respecting your community. You're not giving yourself the rest. You're not talking kindly to yourself. You're not leading yourself in a way that feels really good and focusing on the impact. So you actually want to sit down and do the work and love your brain all the way through.
When you were talking earlier about feminist leadership, one of the things that came to my mind was curiosity. It is a key component of feminist leadership, and it is not something that current mainstream ways of leading endorse. It squashes curiosity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, if we go back to a hierarchy, right, the sort of patriarchal or mainstream version of leadership is the leader knows and everyone else executes, right? And that trickles down and the management knows and everyone else executes. Versus respecting that you have genius and everyone else has genius, which creates so much curiosity of like, oh, Jackie, I wonder what genius is in your brain. I can't wait to find out. You just get to be a lot more interesting and interested in other people and how other things tick and all the different ways we could do this. Oh, I wonder, right? You start treating all of the ideas that are floating around out there with such respect that you actually want to look at them, right? And this doesn't mean that, again, you go and like binge all the podcasts and try and find ideas outside of yourself, but it means that when you are collaborating with people, when you are working with them, right? Or when they're doing their own thing, you're not trying to convince them to do it, the right way. You're just curious about what they get out of it. And like, great for her, not for me is I think Amy Poehler wrote that in one of her books. And I was like, I've loved that mantra ever since. Great for her, not for me. There's one thing we've noticed about the internet, and there's a million ways to make $1 million. There's no one right way. There's no wrong ways, right? There's only the way you decide to do it and then own it and make it yours. And so I think that's where you can start to get curious as to yourself as well. If you are leading yourself, oh, why do I like it this way? What is important to me about this? How does it line up with my values, right? Versus really the uncuriosity, the opposite, that really like institutional way that we've done it is I know best. And there's zero value in me trying to understand what you think, right? There's zero value in trying to learn a new way. There's zero value in trying to deviate from the norm. We just never get curious because the idea is to go as fast as we can, as far as we can, and to only stay within the lane of what we already know to be true, which means we just repeat old mistakes over and over and over again.
We were talking about how self-leadership means not relying on, Google, etc. One of the things that I know people are always trying to figure out is their leadership style, quote unquote. Right. And I know that you posted on that topic on Instagram not too long ago. When I say that, like, what is my leadership style? What do you think on that?
Yeah, well, I think we look for styles outside of ourselves and, oh, that one looks good. I want that. Like it's a menu, right? Oh, I want to be like that kind of person, or I want to, inspire people in that kind of way. And it's so interesting when people come to me, and they're suddenly in a director or VP role, or they are starting their own business and they want to do something for a reason. And instead we actually look at like, who are you being today? What is all of that? right? So, I had someone who's a leader, and she was talking about how she just like has so much compassion and empathy for her people. But she's like, but I'm supposed to do this thing over here, which is leadership. And that looks like this set of, characteristics. And instead we got to decide, like, look, here are all the ways that you show up in the world. Which are the ones that you want to really like turn up the volume on for you to create the outcomes and the people that you want? She's like, oh, well, actually, I do really like the fact that I'm incredibly compassionate, because that one guy in finance who everyone ignores because he just talks too long, I know how to get the best out of him and translate it for the executive team. Or for coaches, it's like, oh, all right. I know that my people are looking for X, Y, and Z. For me, I know my people are looking for someone who is impact driven or values driven, right? I know my people want me to be more interested in aligning myself and my actions with how I show up in the world and that the things that I value than being like, make $1 million in a couple hours, right? They want me to show up with confidence and certainty about my own genius because they're looking for that too, whether or not they know it, right? And so it's about finding those things that are already true in yourself that you really love, that can create the kind of result that you want, and leaning into them and really turning up the volume on them and allowing those to already be part of your leadership style. And sure, if you have some new areas to grow in that you want to figure out how to be better at, awesome. But leadership based on feminist principles is like principles based, not style based. So you can take a principle and make it your own. Oh, how do I want generosity to show up for me as Jackie, the leader? Oh, well, that's going to look like this, and this. It's going to look like my podcast. I'm going to be super generous with the information I give out in it. It's going to look like my free newsletter or whatever, right? But it's the idea that it's not, you have to show up in XYZ ways in order to be this kind of leader.
When you said, generosity, and I want it to look like this, I think we all tend to, we can make our list of our core values, but we just have a word and we don't get clear about what that actual value means to us. And then when you bring on a team, if you haven't defined what generosity looks like in your business, generosity is going to look like something completely different to your team member. And so getting clear on what curiosity or generosity means is pretty important.
Yeah, we actually, I call it operationalizing your values. So we'll go through, and whether like you call them values or the principles or whatever, we actually go through and say like, what would that look like? And we make it really clear. So if you're making a decision, that becomes a really solid lens that you can put things through. And that is so important when doubt and perfectionism want to creep up and say, no, there's a right way to do this, even though it doesn't feel quite right. And I'm not sure what to do. And how do I make this big choice in my business? If you've operationalized all of these principles and values for yourself, you know how to ask the right questions that get you the right answer, right? So, a really classic example is if a company has, quality as one of their values, really high quality. Then when it comes to optimization, if the question comes to the board of like, hey, we can outsource this factory to, this developing nation, and it's going to cost us so much less, it'll save us money. And they say, but quality is our value. How does this line up with that in terms of operationalizing it? If it doesn't line up, it's a clear no, even though the very juicy, tantalizing part to the board is this idea that you could save money. It doesn't line up. And so it's a really clear yes or no. So that can come in for coaches too, right? These are the values of the kinds of clients I want to work with. A client comes, you haven't had a sale in a while. It feels like, oh, I really want to say yes. And you might be able to take it back to your operations, your values. Does this line up with who I want to be? Does this line up with the kind of people I want to serve and the impact I want to create? Do I feel really generous and like I have everything I need by saying yes here? And if you start answering no and it feels cringy, you have a really clear answer instead of just sort of feeling like you have to push through and say yes.
One of the things I like to do with my clients as we plan out a launch is to take those core values and put them up against common scenarios that happen in a launch. So for instance, somebody asks for a refund. Yeah. If a client asks for a refund, how am I going to respond using the value of generosity or quality or curiosity, and taking each one of your values and kind of running through those. And it helps when that situation does arise, because it probably will at some point. You already have your answer and you're already prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do a lot of that as well. My clients are really like, we start to see how all these sort of old patriarchal leadership values are playing out in how you lead yourself and how you respond to doubt and perfectionism, right? Because all of those actions that you're doing are really responding to the doubt that you're enough, the doubt that you know enough, the doubt that you can actually achieve success, the doubt that you are successful in the first place, right? And so we actually start mapping them out, and I call it a down cycle, because it really just creates this like spiral that goes down and down. And the more you do these actions to try and solve for the feeling of doubt, right? So rewriting your marketing all the time, or scrolling a lot, or looking for other people's posts and comparing yourself, perfecting all your work before you actually ship it out into the world, trying one thing, not seeing immediate results, quitting, trying another thing, people pleasing. That's a really big one too. Spending your time doing all these other things that, you know, help you feel better or help them think a certain way about you. When we map it all out and see what we're doing, none of it actually makes us feel less doubt. Usually it makes us feel more doubt, which means that when the doubt comes up again, we just go into more of those actions, thinking that if we just do more of it, it'll solve for the doubt this time for sure. And it just keeps going down and down and down. And instead, what we really want to create is what I call an upcycle. And an upcycle is essentially recognizing that doubt's always going to happen, right? Our human brains walk around through the world scanning for dangers and threats, and doubt is just one of the ways in which it does this. But when we respond to doubt by agreeing with it, we go into a down cycle and we try and solve for it. But when we respond to doubt with like, oh, interesting. I wonder why I'm doubting myself. Okay, but here's what I know to be true from those like leadership principles. Here's how I'm going to respond to myself, right? If an employee came to you being like, I don't know if I can do this, what kind of talk would you have with them? You wouldn't be like, you're probably right. You're kind of garbage. You should work harder and show up better. No, you would say, oh, well, let's like get curious here. What's going on? What are you trying to achieve? Tell me about how you already know how to do this. Give me all your genius. Oh, do you need a break? What's going on in your body? Do you need to respect your humanity right now? Right? You get really curious about all of that. And then you're going to take actions based on what you've done there. So you may start focusing on your values or lean into the impact. Oh, what could be the most impactful for my clients today? Instead of thinking, I got to write a post that gets 20 likes so I can validate myself as a business owner in the world, right? You're like, oh no, what's the most impactful thing I can do? And we map that out so that when I find that this then builds upon it, right? If you start doing things that feel impactful, you've defined what's a win for you, then when the doubt shows up again, you have these results of like, oh yeah, but like I had a great week last week. Okay, so I don't have a consult book this week. No biggie. I had an awesome week last week. I'm still moving forward. Wow, look how far I've come from 3 months ago. Right? You start feeling proud of yourself. So when doubt shows back up, it's easier and easier to have that conversation of like, oh, hey, doubt, what's up, friend? You can go take a seat. I'm going to be over here getting my stuff done. Instead of really believing it and trying to solve for it and action your way out of it.
Yeah, or you know, trying to ignore that it exists.
Yeah.
Which just makes it all the more louder.
Yeah.
And jumping up and down, screaming, waving its hands type of a thing.
Yeah. Or even thinking that it's not supposed to exist. I think that happens for a lot of us, is that we're not supposed to feel doubt. It's this idea that once we're confident, we'll never feel doubt again. Like, no. That's a totally normal, healthy, functioning part of your brain. If you didn't have doubt, you would not be around long. You would think that you could like, you know, fly or do, right? You'd be putting yourself into dangerous situations if you never doubted anything. Confidence isn't the absence of doubt. Confidence is hearing the doubt, saying, okay, I hear you, and then choosing to believe in yourself more than you believe in the doubt.
success, as one of my clients says, just means your brain burps up new things for you to deal with. It's
Yeah.
like, here's something else for you to now look at and examine.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So what do they say? New level, new devil, right? The idea that like doubt is always going to be there no matter how successful you are. And just decide what kind of leader you want to treat your employee as. When that doubt shows up, do you want to like whip them and tell them they have to try harder and do better? Or you want to like deeply encourage them and believe in their unwavering inherent value, even if they mess it up?
what are some resources that people could look into if they want to learn more about feminist leadership styles?
I actually would say the resource you need to look into is yourself. I would encourage you to look outside because you're going to get deep into how everyone else does it and how everyone else thinks about it. And instead, I want you to just make a list of all the ways that you love showing up, all the ways that felt really encouraging for you when you had a leader, all the ways that you want to impact, whether it's your team or your clients or the world, and see how you already have the characteristics that can contribute to that. And that starts to become your leadership style. And then really just go to some basic principles and think about how you'd want to apply those. So if you know there's no right or wrong way to do things, how do you want to choose to do things? If you know that everyone around you is a genius and you are walking around with your own genius inside of your brain, how do you want to get curious about it or get to benefit from it or enjoy it and bring it to the table? If the impact of the work that you have is the most important thing that you are working towards, and you know that when you take care of yourself and you take care of the impact, the bottom line will always take care of itself. What does that actually look like day to day? How you spend your time? Same with your values. As you said, how do you look at your calendar that you currently have set up and how you spend your time and ask yourself, okay, if my biggest value is connection, but I'm hiding behind my computer screen all day, how can I actually live into connection? If my biggest value is self-expression, but I am trying to be everything for everyone, and they don't know that I secretly love to swear and disco balls are my favorite accessory, then like you're not really leaning into that value, right? So I think it's doing a lot of that inner work first and really just seeing how it's already true that you are a feminist leader and seeing where you want to turn up the volume a little bit. See where you want to like turn down the volume a little bit too, right? If you've been hustling and working towards perfectionism, oh, all right. Well, when I turn up the volume on generosity or on feeling like everything is enough because there's no wrong way to do things, right? There's no black and white of right, wrong, good, bad, enough, not enough, then I don't have to look at my peers all the time and feel like it's a stab to the heart when they have, a really big month. We can really start to actually operationalize all of that. And it really doesn't take a long time. I think that's the other thing I don't have time to figure out this leadership jazz. Like, look, you're spending this time hustling your way out of the feelings that you're having, right? Which are of not enoughness, of perfectionism, of doubt. So spend a little time really respecting your humanity in your brain and all the things that it needs to think really effectively and efficiently, to not want to solve for the anxiety it feels through procrastination or through looking at other people's numbers or through comparing yourself. All of those things are how you start to define your own feminist leadership and lean in to already being your own guru when it comes to that.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to cover?
I think we did a really great job of unpacking it. I think the last just things, and we kind of peppered this in throughout, but if you find that you're doing these things of looking for a right way, right? Seeing that, or trying to force your team to do it in the right way, if you are working on perfecting things instead of getting them out into the world, if you are comparing and despairing, if you are people pleasing, if you're in a constant roller coaster cycle of highs and lows in your emotional world for entrepreneurship, or you feel like you just can't figure out the right way to do it, then you might want to notice that there's probably a lot of patriarchal norms at play here, and see how you can really bring some of this feminist principles that we talked to and see how they can actually start to alleviate the need for it. It almost makes them irrelevant. If we start to see that there actually is no right and wrong, we don't need to work to figure that out. If we start to see that we're already doing great and enough, we don't need to hustle for our success, right? We start to see that those are irrelevant things to even work towards anymore.
How can the listeners find you?
The place I hang out most is Instagram. So they can find me at Emily Feairs. So that's Emily, Emily, and Feairs is F as in Frank, Eairs.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jackie. It was an awesome conversation to have.
And that's it for another episode of Here's What I Learned. Show notes and transcripts can be found at jackiehayes.online. While you're there, be sure to subscribe to my emails to receive access to my free launch resource library. Inside the library, you'll find all the resources I use with my Launch Strategy VIP Day clients to create their strategic, intentional, and hustle-free launches. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review. Until next time, stay curious.